This year's Grizzlies NBA season kind of resides on so many ifs. If this player does this, if this player is this, if this player is healthy, if this player doesn't get hurt, if this guy scores this many points, you know what? Let's break it down right now. What are the most important factors to a Grizzlies successful season? I think I got the answers. Let's talk about it coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Going solo today as my co-host Joe Molax gets a day off on today's episode. But thank you guys for tuning in with me on today. Make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Grizzlies with us each and every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Make sure you also continue to find Locked On Grizzlies anywhere and everywhere you get your podcasts. Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, like YouTube. Locked On Grizzlies is there. Continue to like, rate, comment, review, subscribe, all of those good things so we can know how to make the show better for you. And speaking of that, a recent idea, that someone presented to me, one of the fans of this show, was kind of an idea of a debate style this or that segment. And I said, you know what? That's a good idea. But I'm not just going to do it for a segment. We're going to do it for the entire show on today. If you're looking on YouTube, you see the 3 bullet points. If you're not looking on YouTube, basically in the first segment, we'll talk about the biggest keys to the Grizzlies' success this season. In the second segment, we'll talk about Desmond Bane, potential national breakout coming. We'll get more into that as well. And then in the last segment, who's going to be the Grizzlies' defensive leader? I think most of you have an idea of who you want it to be, but I'm going to throw you a little curveball. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. But in the first segment, we're gonna title it. We're gonna title it "This or That." That's the way we're gonna go about today's episode. So make sure you stick along with me, and I want to let me know what you guys think as well. Your opinion is very valued around here on Locked On Grizzlies. But we're gonna do it we're gonna call it "This or That," and I'm gonna present 2 things each segment, and we're gonna break them down, and we're gonna choose one, which is more important to the success of the Grizzlies season this year. And in our first segment, we got 2 things, and it says, which would you rather happen? Basically, this or that. Ja Morant being a top 5 MVP candidate, or the Grizzlies starting opening day lineup playing 60 games together. All right, let's get into this. And I'll give my answer a little bit later, but you go ahead and formulate your answers now. So, Ja Morant, top 5 MVP candidate, or the Grizzlies starting lineup on opening day playing 60 games together. All right, let's start with Ja. Ja Morant, if Ja Morant's a top 5 MVP candidate, I think, that goes without being said that he is having a career year. And then if you get into the lineup thing, like 60 games of the Grizzlies opening day starting lineup. Here's where I'll start. Last year, Grizzlies opening day starting lineup did not play much together. And over the course of the season, we saw injuries popping up to different guys. Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, and then other guys will come into the lineup. Vince Williams, he get injured. So I think when you look at the 60 games of the Grizzlies opening day starting lineup, it's deeper than just, these guys being on the floor together. It's more so the fact that not only were they on the floor together, but they're building that continuity that builds up for the playoffs. The Grizzlies played NBA record amount of starting lineups last year. I believe the final number was 34. 34 different starting lineup combinations, 82 games. NBA record. So if you watched the Grizzlies last season, you saw a team that did not have much continuity. You saw a team where it was different. It was so many different guys in and out of the lineup. And I always go back to at the beginning of the season when the team was struggling. Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose used to emphasize these points much more than the other guys because they've been playing on the Grizzlies before. But I mean, it really was a good message. And it was more so Derrick Rose just saying, I got to learn these guys. And Marcus Smart was speaking from the standpoint of, I didn't really play much in the preseason. If you remember, Marcus Smart was dealing with the abdominal injury last year in the preseason, so he didn't get to play much in the preseason. So he's learning guys' games, pretty much through the flow of regular season NBA games. And same thing with Derrick Rose. Just, hey, look, it takes time. It takes time to realize, hey, Jaren is not one of the best rollers in the NBA, but he's gonna pick and pop a little bit. He wants to get to his left hand, so you got to get out of his way to allow him to get to that left hand. It's smaller things than that. It's all the way down to the way guys like screen set, where they go after the screen is set for them, and all these type of things. But little nuances where you pick up on these things over the course of building up that continuity. So when you get to the playoffs, you're best prepared as possible. But with all that being said, which would you rather happen? Ja Morant, top 5 MVP candidate, or 60 games of the Grizzlies opening day starting lineup? I'm going to say Ja Morant, top 5 MVP candidate. That's my choice in this first one. And I'm going to say Ja Morant being a top 5 MVP candidate simply because I think if that happens, a lot of the 60 games of the open day starting lineup will probably be taken care of. Even if you don't see 60 games of the open day starting lineup, if Ja Morant is a top 5 MVP candidate, here's some things that I know is true. Ja Morant, was a bona fide all-star. He was one of the top players in the NBA. He probably averaged a lot of points and a lot of assists, which means getting other guys involved as well. And on top of that, that means the Grizzlies won a lot. Like, you look at these last MVP winners, for the most part, it's been guys on first seed, second seed, third seed type teams for the last, 5-6 years. I think you got to go back to maybe when Russell Westbrook won it as a 6 or 7 seed or something like that. But other than that, MVP winners have largely been on top 3 seeds in their conference. So if Ja Morant is a top 5 MVP candidate, I think he's very much so in that category, unless it's just some otherworldly season. But I'm going to go with that one. Here's another reason why. I think most of us can agree that Ja Morant is the most irreplaceable person in the Grizzlies starting lineup. That's not a shocker. But let's say you don't get 60 games of the Grizzlies open day starting lineup. So what does that look like? Let's go down through the numbers. Let's say, okay, you got Ja Morant. And so clearly, if Ja Morant is a top 5 MVP candidate, that means that he's met the minimum threshold of playing at least 65 games. So your injury problems would probably be from other positions. It would not be Ja Morant. So if Ja Morant plays at least 65 games to qualify to be an MVP candidate, then, okay, let's say Desmond Bane misses some time. You bring in Luke Kennard. If you say Desmond Bane, if you say Ja Morant, Luke Kennard, and, okay, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, I think that's a decent enough lineup for you to continue. If Desmond Bane misses a week, or misses 10 games, you can go roughly 6-4 in that stretch, depending on what the competition is like. But that is a very winnable stretch for the Grizzlies, and that is something they can, mask for a small period of time. Not a long period of time, small period of time. Then you go down the list, Marcus Smart. Let's say it's Marcus Smart. He hustles a lot. He sometimes puts himself in those vulnerable positions. But you bring in Vince Williams. Again, minimum drop-off from the standpoint of a small period of time. Long period of time, things might start to add up because there's a difference in experience there. But a short period of time, I think that's something that you could mask a little bit. Zach Edey, rookie center, I think it's something you can mask a little bit as well for a small period of time. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the one guy because you're probably putting Santi Aldama in the starting lineup in that case. We've seen Santi start for Jaren before, and the Grizzlies got off to a slow start in the regular season that year, defensive issues and whatnot. But Santi eventually kind of, settled in, and the Grizzlies as a team settled in as well. So the point that I'm making here is all of those guys, I think the Grizzlies still can respectfully be at least around 500 without them. At least. Like, if you're winning a lot of games and, Jaren Jackson Jr. misses 2 weeks, they can tread water. I think the Grizzlies could respectfully go 5-5 in a stretch of 10 games without Jaren, if that were to happen. Same thing without Zach Edey. Same thing without all those other guys. And this is with Ja Morant playing, of course. But we saw last season. Remember that lineup, that first game against the Pelicans when the Grizzlies came back and won? It was Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Vince Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., Bismack Biyombo. Bismack Biyombo was the starting center in the game. Basically, you just have a decent starting center who's good at something. You be good at something. Bismack Biyombo was very good activity guy, energy guy, rim protector, blocking shots and things like that. If you have a guy like that, that's all you need. If you have Ja Morant on the floor who can make these guys much better, that seems like that's going to be the case for me. So let me know what you guys think too, this or that. Ja Morant, top 5 MVP candidate. Some of you may say, hey, Michael, look, we want 60 games of that starting lineup because 60 games of the Grizzlies starting lineup pretty much means that Ja Morant will play 60 games. So some people, you can count on me on that. But with that being said, though, I want to see in between those two case scenarios, Ja Morant, top 5 MVP candidate. I think that takes care of a lot of Grizzlies issues because Ja Morant, as he's proven to do in the past, can sometimes mask those weaknesses when he's on the floor. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to get into another area of this or that conversation. Could Desmond Bane be having a national breakout season coming up here? Could that happen? I think it's possible, but we'll get more into it here coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, remember that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, Gametime is the place to go to get your tickets out here for live events. If you want to go to sporting events, if you want to go, we just saw, shout out to the hip hop R&B fans out there. Rod Wave is coming to FedEx Forum in November. I'm probably going to be there. I checked the Grizzlies schedule when I saw that. And if I be there, I'm going to make sure I go to get my tickets on Gametime. And let me tell you why you should do that. Because Gametime has a new feature as well. And it's called Gametime Picks. And that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff stuff. So you only can see the incredible deals on great seats. And you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets and things like that. And guess what? If even beyond that, you get curated deals to make it easier to find the best price on great seats. You get seat views before you buy, and Gametime offers the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. Event cancellation protection, that is, excuse me. So make sure you go take advantage of this opportunity because, look, you're going to see the seat views. You're going to get the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime guarantees you this. Like, if you don't get the lowest price, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Make sure you take the guesswork out of buying tickets right now. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today because what time is it? Gametime. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, is this Desmond Bane's breakout year? Let's talk about it here next on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I'm Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. Appreciate you guys for tuning in with us on today. In our first segment, we did a this or that, pretty much basically on Ja Morant or the Grizzlies starting lineup, playing 60 games together. Now, we're going to get more into some individual statistical categories, and that's pretty much what we're going to do throughout the rest of this episode. So for this second segment, I think this is a tougher one for you, for us. I think this is a tougher one. And we're going to say this or that. Zach Edey averaging a double-double as a rookie, or Desmond Bane making his first All-Star appearance. Which will be more important for the Grizzlies' success this season? Let's get into the two categories real quick. Now, Zach Edey, again, I said it in the last episode. If you watched it with me and Joe Mullinax, he is the X factor to this Grizzlies team. If Zach Edey comes in and he's a productive center or a guy who can, be a difference maker in the paint, the Grizzlies' success will reflect that. But another guy that the Grizzlies' success will be highly reflected on his play is Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane, I think, last season in that stretch, we talk about the 9 games that Ja played and how Ja made the team look better. It doesn't get talked about enough. Like, I want y'all to hear this, and I want more people to even notice this. What stood out to me amongst all the other things was when Ja got back, Desmond Bane didn't say, I've been playing well, but all right, let me take a step back now. Ja's back. No. Desmond Bane's stats went up more points per game when Ja was on the floor, more assists per game when Ja was on the floor. Desmond Bane was at 25, 5, and 5. He averages that over the course of a season. I mean, that's he's probably not gonna average 25, 5, 5. Like that's some real, that's some but anyways. Desmond Bane, if he's roughly in that area, 23 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, somewhere around there, that's all-star numbers if you're winning. And I think if we're saying Desmond Bane first all-star appearance, we're factoring in the fact that the Grizzlies will probably win a lot of games. So we'll choose one of those here in a second. But before we choose one of those, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast because there is no offseason in NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now let's get back into it. Desmond Bane, national breakout, first-time All-Star, or Zach Edey double-double? I'm going to choose the Zach Edey double-double for this one. I think if Zach Edey averages 10 points, 10 rebounds, like it doesn't even have to be a massive double-double. Like we're not talking 15 and 12. If he averages 10 and 10 on this Grizzlies team and proves to be a reliable defensive anchor, everything else will fall in place. He's the X factor to me. Desmond Bane may not be an all-star, not even just because of his performance. With Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., all on the floor together, it's no doubt in my mind that all three of these guys could average roughly 20 points a game. We saw it over that 9-game stretch. Very small sample size, but all of them pretty much elevated their games. I think for the first 3 or 4 games after Ja got back, each of them scored 20 or more. Like it was a pretty good run for all three of those guys. But with that being said, I keep saying it, man. Zach Edey is the difference maker. If you get 10 points, 10 boards out of him, guess what? I think that puts the Grizzlies in somewhere in the top 10 as a rebounding team. And if he's rebounding the basketball like that, they're going to get out and run. The transition numbers will take care of themselves. If he's playing enough, because if he's averaging 10 and 10, he's getting a lot of minutes. And if he's getting a lot of minutes, you better believe in a Taylor Jenkins system, that means you're playing defense. Taylor Jenkins ain't putting you on that floor at center if you're not getting a lot of defensive stops. You're gonna be back on the pine. So if Zach Edey's playing enough minutes to kind of get those 10 and 10 numbers, that'll also signal that, oh, his defense has been good. His screen setting is getting better. And I think this is very reflective of a Grizzlies successful season. If Desmond Bane is an all-star, I think that means the Grizzlies are having a lot of success too. But I still think that if Desmond Bane can be an all-star this year and the Grizzlies could still have notable weaknesses that limit them from, reaching their playoff potential. You could say the same thing about Zach Edey averaging a double-double. You say, oh, yeah, Damichael, he's averaging, as Steven Adams used to say, one of Steven Adams' favorite things to say about the rebounding was, yes, I'm getting a lot of offensive rebounds because we're missing a lot of shots. So you could very well counter me and say, well, Damichael, if Zach Edey's averaging a double-double, we're probably sucking at three-point shooting. And I would say, so that's a fair point. That is a fair point. But at the same time, I think if you were to choose between the Grizzlies sucking at three-point shooting or the Grizzlies being a bad rebounding team, I'm going to say the latter. I would much rather them be a better rebounding team simply from the fact that we saw it in the playoffs. Anthony Davis on that team. The year before, Kevon Looney comes in the starting lineup against the Grizzlies in that Golden State series, completely changes things. Steven Adams couldn't deal with him. And the Grizzlies overall could not deal with Kevon Looney on the boards. So with all that being said, I think this is a tough one because if Desmond Bane's an all-star, he's putting up big numbers. The Grizzlies are probably winning a lot of games, and he's beating out some real good two guards. Like that's another reason why I think the Zach Edey one is the choice for me because I mean you're talking Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, the list goes on over there, and then the point guards, Steph Curry, Ja Morant, Luka, Like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, I could keep naming them all day. In terms of the talent pool over there at the guard spot, that Desmond Bane would be beaten out. So if he were to beat out some of those guys, it would be a very good thing. But all in all, Zach Edey double-double takes the cake for me here in this segment. We're going to do this one more time. I got one more for you guys as well as we get to the third segment. And it's going to revolve around someone leading the Grizzlies in a particular defensive category. So make sure you stay tuned for that here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you can get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about who will lead the Grizzlies in a particular statistical category. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. Welcome to a special edition. I think we can call this it. It is as we go through, some would you rather type things. I'm calling it this or that. But special edition of Locked On Grizzlies today. Let me know what you guys think as well, on some of these choices. And for our last one, I thought outside the box a little bit here. And the two options that I'm going to present to you are Marcus Smart leading the NBA in steals, or Jaren Jackson Jr. leading the NBA in blocks. Which would you rather happen for the Grizzlies' success? Let's get into it a little bit. Like, for one, are these things even possible? Yes. They're both very, very possible. With Marcus Smart in particular, if people may not remember, Marcus Smart was averaging 2 steals per game pretty much this season with the Grizzlies. Played 20 games only. He averaged 2 steals a game. Marcus Smart was leading the NBA in steals at the time of that first injury. He was leading the NBA in steals per game. And we talked about the 2K ratings where Marcus Smart, I think he's second, has the second best steal rate, like with his hands, has second best steal rate on the game. Marcus Smart is a pest defensively, yes, as a positional defender, but he gets his hands on the ball a lot, and he can pretty much be that defensive playmaker for you. Jaren Jackson Jr. has also proven to be a defensive playmaker. Jaren Jackson Jr. did it a different way last season when he was at center. It was more complimentary, averaged a career high in steals, but also was getting the blocks as well. Not as many as we're used to. His blocks numbers were almost essentially cut in half as he played center after the last 2 years of being a dominant force at power forward. So I think with Jaren Jackson Jr., if we start there, if Jaren Jackson Jr. is leading the league, in blocks, of course, the Grizzlies are having a lot of defensive success. I think that means Zach Edey is doing well at center, which is allowing Jaren to roam more. And Jaren's back in that just that dominant, forceful role as that shot blocker in the roaming, in that roaming aspect defensively. If Marcus Smart's leading the NBA in steals, not only is he available, because that's the big one with Marcus Smart, he's playing a lot of minutes, which in my mind means he's being very impactful. He's holding off a surging Vince Williams, because Vince Williams can hoop. Like, if you didn't know, Vince boy got game. Now, here's my choice for this one, and I'll make it make sense. I'm choosing Marcus Smart leading NBA in steals. If you're saying, okay, Jaren Jackson Jr. leading the NBA in blocks or Marcus Smart leading NBA in steals, Marcus Smart leading NBA in steals. And here's why. For one, a lot of Jaren's blocks, he keeps a decent amount of them in bounds, but pretty much some of them will go out of bounds. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a very forceful shot blocker, whereas Marcus Smart steals can't go out of bounds. Like, you can't steal the ball from out of bounds. So I think naturally there is the natural part of just steals being easier to turn defense into offense. And the Grizzlies, the way they like to get out in transition, running the floor, more steals will potentially lead to more transition points. Naturally, that's one reason why. And then number two, I'm gonna pivot a little bit because this was gonna throw you a curveball here, and I think if Jaren Jackson Jr. were to lead the NBA in blocks, you know what that would mean? I mean, he'd have more blocks than Victor Wembanyama. That means he'd have more blocks than Rudy Gobert. And if Jaren Jackson Jr. is leading the NBA in blocks, Grizzlies gonna have a top defense. If the Grizzlies have a top defense and they have a relatively healthy season, you know what that means, right? They're gonna be near the top. But my reasoning doesn't have a whole lot to do with this season, actually. Like the rest of these answers, everything has been heavily reliant on what's going to play out this season. Oh, if this happens, the Grizzlies win a lot of games. Oh, if this happened, the Grizzlies could potentially be a top seed in the Western Conference. I'm choosing Marcus Smart, and this was for a little bit of a different reason. Now, and the reason I'm going to do this, because this is more of a long-term reason. And the reason that I'm going to do this, and I'll circle back to this again, is simply because I think there's minimal difference in the Grizzlies' success this season between Marcus Smart leading the NBA in steals and Jaren Jackson Jr. leading the NBA in blocks. Like, I don't think one of them heavily weighs over the other in determining, oh, yeah, that's going to put the Grizzlies as a 1 seed, where that will only keep them as a 4 or 5 or even lower in the play-in or something. So minimal difference, I think, between these two, even more minimal than the previous two categories that we discussed. Now, with that being said, the reason that I'm saying Jaren Jackson Jr. Is not my choice here is because if Jaren Jackson Jr. leads the NBA in blocks, he's going to make an all-defensive team, first team or second team. He's going to be on there. And if he's on the all-defensive team, he is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And let me remind you guys, if Jaren Jackson Jr. wins Defensive Player of the Year, if Jaren Jackson Jr. is first team, second team, or third team All-NBA, the price will be right next summer. We're talking over $300 million in extension money he'll be eligible for. Jaren Jackson Jr. has one Defensive Player of the Year in the last couple years. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, because he has to do one or the other, either first team, second team, or third team All-NBA, or he wins Defensive Player of the Year, he is eligible for a Supermax extension that's 35% of the Grizzlies' salary cap. Without the Supermax extension, his contract can be 30%. So that's a sizable gap. And you will remember this conversation when we were talking about, Ja Morant's extension, right? Ja Morant missed out on upwards of, I think, $40 million, somewhere around that range, because he got the regular rookie scale extension, same one that Desmond Bane got, which is 20% of the salary cap. But if you get the max rookie extension, it's 25%. Same thing with the veteran max extension as well, except they start off at 30%, bigger number of veteran players, 30%, which is what at this point Jaren Jackson Jr. can be eligible for. But if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, or he first team, second team, or third team All-NBA, Jaren Jackson Jr. is eligible for the Supermax. Not saying he'll take it, not saying the Grizzlies will even offer it, but it will be on the table. And that is important because if you want to keep this core together, like there's this, for one, look, I'm strictly talking basketball here. I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I'm all for Jaren get all your coins. I love seeing NBA players get paid. Get every single penny that you can milk out of these franchises because this is life-changing money. But with all that being said, from the basketball standpoint, if you want the Grizzlies to kind of keep this core together, Marcus Smart's steals, having a lot of steals, would not only would it kind of lead to a lot of success this season with the Grizzlies and kind of help them in that area. Like, it wouldn't be a big difference whether Jaren or Marcus, still lead the NBA and steals lead the NBA in blocks. But that also is better suited for the Grizzlies to keep this core together long term. If Jaren gets this money, it's going to be great for him. And it will mean that he had the best season of his career this year. And if Jaren has the best season of his career this year, the Grizzlies are probably going to strike. Like, the Grizzlies are going to be right there in the thick of it in the Western Conference. But at the same time, that paycheck for him is going to get a little bit bigger. And that tax number for the Grizzlies is going to get a whole lot larger. And there will be some decisions that will have to be made. Maybe Marcus Smart will have to be traded as a result of Jaren Jackson Jr. getting that deal. Maybe you move off of Brandon Clark as a result of Jaren Jackson Jr. getting that deal. But things won't be the same. So you have to factor in the big picture of this as well. And at the end of the day, you would love to see all these things happen. You would love to see Desmond Bane make an all-star game. You would love to see John Morant be available for more than 65 games and be an MVP candidate. You'd love to see the starting lineup have some continuity. You'd love to see Jaren Jackson Jr. lead the NBA in blocks and Marcus Smart to lead the NBA in steals. But all these things won't happen. It's just the nature of the beast in the NBA. And we'll see, how these things play out over the course of the NBA season. But thank you guys for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of today. Now, go make Locked On NBA podcast your next listen, because Locked On NBA is where the season never ends and is providing the national expertise with a local perspective. You can find a link to Locked On NBA in the description, so you don't need to search for it. It's right here in the description of this episode. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Appreciate you guys for tuning in with me on Locked On Grizzlies. Let me know what you guys think of this format as well. Should we do it some more with some different categories? Maybe even get Joe Mullinax in here. Everybody know Joe Mullinax has some takes. Joe will have some takes for you. So this might be a good segment, a good style of episode to bring Joe Mullinax in as well. But until next time, everyone, remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.